Hi, it's been a while since I've sat down, at least filmed like this, because I've been going through a bit of a reading slump. A bit. Let's be real. I've been going through a massive reading slump. And really, I've just been going through like a life slump. I'm not exactly sure how it happened. Maybe I just like overcommitted to too many things, or maybe I just expected too much of myself while I had so much on my plate. But I'm feeling decently better now. I think I'm still working on it, still working through it, but I'm feeling well enough to do this, and I want to be reading again. And so I'm letting go of the things that I was planning for myself, which was like this whole 5 weeks with my TBR. I had one of the videos published, which was the NetGalley time, and then I had been working on my TBR spin catch up, which I have basically caught up. If you want to hear more of that, I kind of cover it better in my Q2 wrap up, or I will. I haven't filmed it yet, but that'll come out before this video. So I've like caught up on my books there, but I only filmed a portion of it. And then there's supposed to be 3 videos after that with other like TBRs and stuff, which were meant to make my like reading for my TBR exciting and everything. But I think that planning out things so much, I don't know, it did something weird to my brain. Or maybe it didn't, and just other things did something weird to my brain, and this is where I ended up. But I'm wiping my slate clean of like feeling like I need to read those books, because Booker is coming and I want to feel like I'm in a good place to where I can have my TBR dictated by something completely out of my control again. So for right now, I just want to have fun reading. That is the plan. So I figured I'm going to follow the general online advice for getting out of a reading slump. So one of the main tips that shows up is to take a break. If you're reading too much, take a break. I've done that already. I have not really read much for quite a while. I just barely started getting back into it. There was one day that I woke up and was like, you know what? I kind of want to read some of War and Peace, which I haven't picked up in a long time. And so like I did for that day, and it was wonderful. And now I don't feel like picking it back up, and I'm being okay with that. But I also started Leviathan Wakes, which is a reread for me, but I'm reading it with a group. This is a part of like my sci-fi reading group, which is Gemma from Gem of Books, Fraser from Springboard Thought, and Sandy from Miss Reads a Lot. But we also have Jill from the Book Bully joining us for this. But this is really great and perfect timing, because a lot of advice says that you should reread a favorite. I've only read Leviathan Wakes once before, but I loved it. And also to read with a group. So that's kind of perfect. Some of the other advice that I think I'm going to try to take for this is to schedule like a specific time every day to do some reading. I think that generally I'm going to try to do like after work time for that, but I wouldn't mind reading some in the morning. Lately in the morning, I've been waking up earlier than I typically do, but telling myself I don't have to get out of bed for like 30 minutes after I wake up. But I can't really read like a physical book during that time, because then I'd have to turn the light on and Curtis is still sleeping. I kind of figured that I could get something maybe on my phone or my Kindle. Actually, I might just go ahead and look on my script and see some of my saved reading. Oh, you know what? This is perfect. So last year while I was in Thailand and Indonesia, I think I was like flying like from the US to Indonesia, and there was a lot of long flights. And I had downloaded from, I think it was Amazon Prime, The Summer I Turned Pretty, which is based off of a young adult trilogy. But I ended up absolutely loving the show. And then once I was done with it, I was like, well, now I need to know what happens next. So I started like reading the series, but I only read the first 2 books in the trilogy, and I never read the 3rd one. And typically YA is not like a genre that I go for, or that I ever feel like in the mood for. But maybe this is the perfect time, because that was another tip that I found, which was to read like a middle grade or YA book, something that's like easier to read. And I have the ebook on Scribd, so that should be perfect to just read on my phone. It's really light, so maybe in the mornings I'll do that. But again, I'm gonna try not to like push myself too hard in any direction, because I think that that's like the main thing. Letting go of my TBR, that was another tip, which I kind of already talked about. Releasing myself of those expectations of like doing those videos. So I apologize if you were really looking forward to those, but yeah, I hope this will be enjoyable anyways to watch. And you know, maybe this could help in some way. I don't know if I'll ever make a video that's like how to get out of a reading slump, but this seems like the next best thing. I'm in a reading slump. Here's what I'm trying to get out. Even though my scheduled reading time was right after that last clip, I wasn't really feeling up to it. So instead, I decided to just watch some TV, eat some popcorn, have a relaxing night, which was great because then in the morning, I actually felt like reading again. So I picked up Leviathan Wakes and read during that time, and kind of just decided that maybe the morning was the better time for my scheduled reading anyways. It's usually when I feel more motivated to read,
And so much can happen during the day that could be overwhelming or make me feel like I'm not up for picking up a book.
Apologies for the wet hair, but just took a shower. And it's kind of weird how all I've done today so far is read a bunch more than I have been and take a shower, and I already feel like, wow, I've done so much today. And that's just, I think, a testament to how much I've lowered my expectations, and it's completely necessary. And so yeah, I think I'm feeling better today. I don't know, it still like comes in waves, so it's not even just like a boom, like better, but I think we're gradually like going up, even if sometimes there's like little dips back down. This morning I woke up and I read a bit of whatever the third book of The Summer I Turned Pretty was, and I really enjoyed it. The book is going in an entirely different direction than I expected. More fast-paced, I guess, than I expected. And so it grabbed my attention pretty quickly, and I've been enjoying it. It's still very cute, and I think that it put me on like a good track for the rest of the day as far as reading goes. I don't know how to talk too much about that book considering it's the last book of a trilogy, but I'm liking it. So then after that, I got out of bed and I read some Leviathan Wakes and caught up to the group. It's so nice being back in this story. It's even more fast-paced than I remembered it being. So yeah, that's pretty perfect. And then once I had finished doing that, I was like, I still feel like reading, which is great news. And I don't know if it's the excitement of like getting to just choose whatever book I want to read next. And so another one of the tips that I saw for getting out of a reading slump is to read a bunch of different books, like a little bit of a bunch of different books to kind of decide what you're feeling. So I kind of just pulled a bunch of books from my bookshelf that I thought I could be really into right now. So I read 5 pages of Other People's Clothes, which was sent to me by Anchor Books. And this centers around like 2 friends in Berlin, and they're like involved in the art scene. So it was focusing on Zoe, who is talking to somebody who's like interviewing her or like asking her questions, but I can't tell if it's more of like a therapist type thing or something else. It almost seems like she might be in some type of institution that's there to help her mentally, but I'm not really sure. And the questions that are being asked are about a summer that she had in Berlin with her friend, maybe girlfriend in Berlin. It seems like she or both of them became really well known because of that, but we don't know why, or if it's like, you know, fame or infamy that has got them so talked about. I also read a couple of pages of Cultish, which is a nonfiction book about cults, but not just like full-on, obviously occult situations, but also just in our everyday lives or things that people like really dive into that could be a little bit cultish. So the beginning of this one starts by talking about a cult which I hadn't heard of called 3HO, and it's a real like us against them mentality. And so it kind of like talks about that, especially like with the mantras and how having those makes you feel like separate from other people because like only you and this group of people understand this and other people don't. And then it just started getting into this woman that got into CrossFit because she knew like a friend that did it or something, and how they have like all of their lingo that's specific to things that are talked about elsewhere, but like they talk about it in a very specific way. And so I assumed that it's going to draw a connection between those 2 things by the end of like the first chapter or the introduction or whatever it was. Again, something I am really excited to read. However, I don't know if nonfiction is the path for me right now. And then I also picked up The 3-Body Problem. This book I just got while I was in Denver. So I read a bit of this, and really it centered on like there's a little piece on kind of this battle, like setting the scene, and it was pretty gruesome. And then we just started seeing one of the main characters who is a physics professor, and he's being like questioned in front of a crowd. And so there's definitely intrigue there, but I think that I want to learn a bit more about the historical time period that this is set in, which is the 1960s during China's Cultural Revolution. I don't know anything about it really, and so I wouldn't mind just like watching a quick YouTube video or something like that first before diving into this. But either way, I think that this one would require a little bit too much of my brain power right now to be able to read it. So I'm gonna wait. So I also read 5 pages of 0 Days by Ruth Ware. So this one had very like heisty vibes. It's basically this husband and wife team. The wife was like breaking into, it was some type of company, and the husband is like the guy in the van helping out digitally and in her earpiece and all that. But I know that the premise is that the husband ends up dying, and then the wife has to like figure out what happened. Yeah, this one grabbed me right away, knowing that the other books that I've read now, this isn't the one that I ended up picking, but it very easily could have been because of how it started. And then The Only One Left. This one started with a bang. I actually only read like 3 pages, I think, of this one because it was kind of this introduction. It's this caregiver that is taking care of a woman who a long time ago was accused of killing her family. And now she is seemingly telling the caregiver her story and possibly having her write it out for her. I don't know if that's actually true. It was just like the vibe that I got, but I read very little. And then the last book that I read a couple pages of was West Heart Kill by Dann McDorman, sent to me by Knopf Publishing. This one comes out in October. And this one was super intriguing. So it's set in this like remote hunting village, but it's like speaking directly to you in the story, talking kind of about like the formula of setting up mysteries, and then like the characters will say something and then it'll say to you, like the book will say to you. This is probably making you think that this book could be kind of like this type of mystery novel. And you're wondering to yourself, like, is that the way that this one's going to go? It's very interesting. It's very different than anything that I feel like I've read specifically in this genre. I do love kind of meta books like this that talk about the genre that they're writing about, but I don't think that I've ever experienced it in a mystery before. So I'm really interested in this, which brings me to, I'm torn. I'm torn between these two. I initially picked West Heart Kill because also, I didn't even say, this is set on the 4th of July and today is the 4th of July, which feels kind of perfect. So I think I might just like continue to give this one a shot today and see how I feel about it. But if I find myself like not really wanting to pick it up throughout the day, then I think I'm gonna try out The Only One Left and see how that goes instead. But I feel like these are 2 great options and ones I'm really excited about. Also, I've kind of decided that the goal of this video is to ideally, by the end of this video, be able to read books that are a part of like a TBR. So hopefully by giving myself time to just read the books that I'm really excited about, I will be ready to go forward in the other books that I do want to read, but they're more for specific purposes. I ended up reading some of West Heart Kill that day, but by the next day I just felt like I wanted to be reading The Only One Left, the Riley Sager book, and so that's what I did. So I felt pretty good today. I went to Run Club tonight for the first time in a while. That feels like a lot of good progress somehow, even though it's just going to one thing. Reading wise, I read some more of The Summer We'll Always Have the Summer. By the end of this video, I'm gonna remember what that book is called. It's feeling a little one note at this point, but I think I'm already like nearing the halfway point, so. And then I read a little bit more of West Heart Kill, but instead I was like, you know what, I'm still just thinking about Riley Sager's The Only One Left. And so I picked it up and I just started reading that. I'm really enjoying it. I think this is exactly what I want, like a thriller with short chapters. I'm only like 4 chapters in so far, but I'm enjoying it. And I think that this book is what I'm going to stick to in this video. Also, I don't know that I have any more tips that I really need to follow from like reading slump things. I think one that I haven't really talked about is choosing different formats for reading, which I guess I'm kind of doing with reading a book on my phone, which I haven't done in a while. But a lot of the suggestions are to listen to an audiobook instead of reading a book. But I almost always have an audiobook going on, and I was definitely like listening to an audiobook when this whole reading slump happened, so it wasn't really like going to be a change up for me. And I think that I was starting to like pressure myself to listen to books whenever I was able to, even when I didn't really feel like it. It just felt like something I should be doing. So if I was like cooking, it's like, oh, I should be listening to an audiobook because that's like the way I can get through books faster. And that's not the way that we should look at reading, you know? Anyways, I feel like this is all going very well. I probably set myself up well just by taking a long break before this. I think that that's really the key, which is always hard when you're a big reader and you just want to read a bunch, but you like want to read. And then you see these tips for getting out of a reading slump and they're like, take a break from reading. And you're like, no, that's the opposite of what I want. But it really, I mean, there's just nothing like it. There's nothing like that. I'm just giving yourself some grace. And now I'm reading a book that I'm really excited about, which it feels so good to say that. I then headed on a trip to Gatlinburg. Originally, I was trying to finish this video before I had this trip, but it just wasn't happening, so I ended up taking Riley Sager with me and decided to finish the video once I had finished the book. And I filmed a wrap-up for this video, but I start off mid-thought because the audio wasn't great at the beginning, so I cut out as much of it as I could, but no, it does continue to get better. Firstly, though, I wanted to start off with the first book that I mentioned, I think, in this, which was It's Not Summer Without You. I did say that I would know that book title by the end of this video, so hopefully that's it. But that was the book that was the last book in the trilogy, The Summer I Turned Pretty, that I started forever ago, finally got back to, wanted to finish up, and I did finish that book. And it was kind of lackluster, like the ending. To be an ending of the whole thing, I felt like we didn't really get that great conclusion scene that I wanted. And while it does still have like a nice happy ending, I feel like we didn't get the actual climax of it, but instead it was like things are going crazy and then like boom, a little bit later things are perfect. That just was really disappointing. I won't say any more than that about it though, because I don't want to spoil it. I am, however, watching the second season, which has now come out, and I forgot just how cheesy it was. It definitely feels like one of those shows where they let the characters kind of improv their more like casual scenes, which sometimes leads to really good moments, like people being at like a boardwalk and everybody's like talking, laughing, having fun, like building off of each other. And sometimes, specifically when it's just two people in the scene, it leads to like really awkward interactions, and I totally forgot about that. But after like an episode of getting used to it again, it's been really fun to watch. And either way, I do significantly attribute that book with getting me out of my reading slump, because that was a huge part of it. Hi, Klaus. You're just gonna, yep. And now he wants to leave. Okay, but now let's get to The Only One Left by Riley Sager. I ended up loving this book. I'm so glad that I like read it right away, because now I've been able to participate in like Books and Lala's Literally Dead book club. She did a live stream about this book, so it was nice to be able to actually watch that. So yes, I did really love The Only One Left. I can't really talk much more than I already have about it, just because, like, spoilers, it's a thriller. But I will say the ending is great. It's my kind of ending. There were definitely some twists and turns. I think there were a few things that were kind of stretches, but not too bad. So I think I said at one point during this video that my goal of this was that I would be able to read, by the end of it, a TBR that I've curated prior to like reading the books, because that's typically how I do my reading. I want to leave room for myself to pick up books when I want to, but also there are videos I'm excited about and I'm planning for that I want to, work my way through. Not to mention, Booker's been announced and I want to read Booker. And I am happy to say that has indeed happened. I am currently reading Booker. I'm in the third of the 13 books, and it was announced about a week ago, so that's pretty good. Not only that, but I have officially returned to reading War and Peace every day, which is probably the most exciting thing, just because it takes a lot for me to be in the right frame of mind to do this. So to have gotten all the way back to that point where I feel like I'm the most motivated to read, but I'm also trying to be very aware of how much I'm expecting out of myself. This is great. So I'm back to reading just a little bit of this every day. So yeah, at this point, at the end of this week, I should be making it to the end of volume 1, which is cool. So obviously, like, I still have a lot to go in this, but it's really great to be making progress. And by starting off my days with reading a little bit of that, it does really set me up with success for my other reading. So all in all, this was hugely successful. Now, to kind of summarize the whole thing, what are the tips that I think helped me the most? And I hate to say it because I feel like it's so clear, but it's just taking a break. That's the main thing. I think that I just needed to chill out on reading, to completely remove all expectations for myself. That was huge because I had a lot of expectations for my reading prior to starting this video. And I just needed to not. Once I did that, and then once I gave myself the space to only read if I felt like it, and do that for many days until I truly did feel like reading, that was when it started kind of turning around for me, which really took place basically before this video even started. I will say, however, the second tip that helped the most is just reading what you're interested in reading. Being able to finish a YA trilogy, that's not something that I ever really read, and wasn't even really for like a video or anything. Like, yes, I did read it for this video, but in the past I had thought about finishing the trilogy and being like, well, I can't even talk about it, or if I do talk about it on YouTube, like, it'll be so inconsequential because I feel like my viewers don't really read books like that, because I don't typically read books like that. But instead of thinking through all that, just pushing that aside and being like, this is what I feel like reading right now, this is where my brain's at, that was just the better move for me. And then, of course, reading a book that I had just gotten on pre-order, like, that made me really excited about reading again. And it still took me a little while to get through, but I was okay with that. I think at first I was a little bit disappointed because I was like, oh, this is a thriller, it's Riley Sager, I love it, like, I'm really loving reading it, but I'm not reading it as fast as I feel like I should be. But just like I needed to just not be thinking about all that because that's so silly. There's no should be's for reading amount or reading speed. And I think that every once in a while, a reading slump hits you in the face to remind you of that. So if you're going through a reading slump, I hope this video helps you to some extent. And if not, I hope you just had fun watching. And if you did enjoy, consider subscribing and sticking around. I'll be talking a lot about booker books coming up, but really a bunch of different types of books. And I'm really excited about the things that I have coming for the next few months. So I hope to see you there. Bye.